Hi, I'm Sarah. Never thought I'd be sharing this story, but here I am. Sometimes life hits you with twists you never see coming, right? 5 months ago, I had what looked like the perfect life: a loving husband, a beautiful daughter, and a home filled with love. Well, at least that's what I thought. Mike and I met 8 years ago at Joe's Diner. I was finishing my nursing degree, working the late shift to pay for school. He'd come in after his construction job, always ordering the same thing: coffee, black, and apple pie. Do you know those romantic movies where the guy keeps coming back just to see the girl? Yeah, it was kind of like that. He'd sit at my counter, telling jokes that weren't funny, but I laughed anyway. We got married in a small ceremony, nothing fancy. My grandmother had left me her house, a modest 3-bedroom with a garden that needed work, but it was ours. Mike had a good job as a construction supervisor, and I landed a position at Memorial Hospital. Our daughter Emily came along, completing our little family. She has his eyes and my smile, the perfect mix of both of us. Life was simple back then. We'd have family movie nights every Friday, Emily squeezed between us on the couch, popcorn everywhere. Mike would do the dad thing, pretending to fall asleep and snore super loud, making Emily giggle. I'd watch them both, thinking how lucky I was. Then I got promoted to head nurse. Better pay, better hours, but also more responsibility. Mike seemed happy at first, celebrating with a bottle of champagne he'd been saving. But something changed after that. It was subtle, like when you feel a storm coming but the sky's still clear. His mother, Barbara, well, that's where things get interesting. She'd always been, let's say, particular about me. A nurse. But Mike, honey, you could do so much better, she'd say, loud enough for me to hear from the kitchen. At first, I brushed it off. Lots of people have mother-in-law stories, right? But Barbara? She was playing a whole different game. She'd show up unannounced, always when Mike was home. Oh, Sarah, she'd say, looking around our living room with that fake smile, still haven't updated the furniture? This place could use a woman's touch. I'd bite my tongue, reminding myself that she was Emily's grandmother. Money was okay, then not great, but we managed. Mike brought in a steady income, and my nursing salary covered the extras. We were putting a little aside each month for Emily's college fund. Nothing fancy, but it was enough. At least, that's what I thought. Looking back now, I should have seen the signs. The way Mike started coming home later, always with some excuse about work. How he'd get defensive when I'd ask about our joint account. The whispered phone calls with his mother. But you know how it is when you're in the middle of something. Sometimes you miss what's right in front of you. Then came that Thursday. The day everything changed. But before I tell you about that, you need to know what happened the week before, when Mike lost his job. That's when the real cracks started to show, and my perfect life began to unravel. That Thursday morning started like any other. I was getting Emily ready for school, packing her favorite peanut butter sandwich, when Mike walked in. He looked different: tie crooked, hair messy. Not his usual put-together self. They're downsizing, he said, dropping his work bag on the kitchen floor. 15 years, Sarah. 15 years, and his voice cracked. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Just don't. I tried to be supportive, really did. Hey, with your experience, you'll find something quick. Johnson Construction is hiring. I saw their ad yesterday, but Mike wasn't having it. His face turned red, that vein in his forehead popping out like it does when he's angry. A supervisor position, Sarah? Or are you suggesting I go back to being just another worker? He spat the words out like they tasted bad. I've earned my position. I'm not starting from the bottom again. Emily was watching us, her little hands clutching her backpack. I shooed her to the living room and turned on her favorite cartoon. Some conversations aren't for 8-year-old ears. That's when Barbara showed up. I swear that woman has a sixth sense for drama. She burst through our door like she owned the place. My poor baby boy, she cooed, pulling Mike into a hug. I heard everything. Don't worry, you're too good for that company anyway. Then she turned to me, eyes narrow as a snake's. Sarah, I hope you're not pressuring him to take just any job. My son has standards. The way she said standards made it clear she thought I had none. Weeks passed. Our savings started disappearing fast. Mike spent his days on the couch, scrolling through job listings but rejecting everything. Entry level. Beneath me. Not worth my time. The muttering became our household's background music. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital. What else could I do? Bills don't pay themselves. One night, after a 12-hour shift, I found our joint account almost empty. The money I'd just deposited gone. Mike, where's the money? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't even look up from his phone. Needed it for some things. I'm the man of this house, aren't I? Barbara was over more than ever now. They'd sit together, whispering, stopping whenever I entered the room. Quinn, she'd say, never could get her to call me Sarah. Don't you think it's time you asked your hospital about better positions for Mike? Surely they need administrators. I tried explaining healthcare administration required specific degrees and experience. Big mistake. So now my son isn't good enough for your precious hospital. Barbara's voice could have frozen hell over. Maybe if you supported him more. Then Emily got sick. Not just sniffles sick, but burning fever, rushed to ER sick. I was terrified. But Mike? He was at his mother's house, unreachable. I sat alone in that hospital waiting room, watching doctors treat my baby girl, wondering how we'd afford this when our savings were gone. That's when I noticed something else was off. Mike had been getting mysterious texts, smiling at his phone like I hadn't seen in months. I told myself it was job-related. Had to be, right? But deep down I knew something bigger was coming. I just never imagined how big. Never imagined that the next morning would change everything. That night, I was up late checking our bills. Emily was finally getting better, but the hospital charges were piling up. My credit card maxed out, my savings drained. I was drowning in numbers that wouldn't add up. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Mike hadn't come home again. Then I heard cars pulling up, doors slamming. Mike burst through our front door, Barbara right behind him. But something was different. They weren't sneaking or whispering. No, they walked in like they owned the place. Mike was wearing a new suit, not from our empty bank account. Sarah, he said my name like it was something sour. Pack your things. You and Emily need to leave just like that, cold as ice. I thought I was hearing things. What are you talking about? I stood up, papers falling from my lap. That's when I saw it, that smirk on Barbara's face. The same one she wore at our wedding when she told everyone her son was settling. Show her. Honey, Barbara practically purred. Mike pulled out his phone and pulled up a news article. My world stopped spinning when I saw the headline, "Local man wins $27 million in state lottery." That's right, Mike's voice dripped with satisfaction. I won. Big time. And guess what? The ticket? Bought it after I moved money from our account. It's all mine, legally. My lawyer confirmed it. Barbara stepped forward, designer purse swinging from her arm new. Get this poor woman out of here, Mike. You don't need her dragging you down anymore. Time for an upgrade, sweetie. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Emily's asleep upstairs was all I could manage to say. Oh, she can stay with her father. Barbara waved her hand dismissively. We'll get her a proper nanny. Much better than being raised by a working mother. She said it like it was a disease. That's when something in me snapped. All those years of her snide comments, Mike's laziness, the stolen money, it all boiled over. You think you can just throw us away? My voice was shaking, but not from fear. That money. You used our joint account. The money I earned while you sat around feeling sorry for yourself. Mike's face turned red. It's my ticket, my win. You're just jealous because what I cut him off. Because I worked. Did you take care of our daughter while you played on your phone? Paid bills while you drained our accounts. Barbara stepped between us. Now listen here, you gold-digging little. No, you listen. I was surprised by my voice. Call me whatever you want. But that money? You bought that ticket with my earnings? And Emily? She's not some accessory for your new rich guy lifestyle. I pulled out my phone, hands steady now. I'm calling my lawyer. Right now. Let's see how legally yours that money is when the court finds out where it came from. The look on their faces, I'll never forget it. That moment when they realized this wouldn't be as easy as they thought. You wouldn't dare, Barbara hissed. Watch me, I replied. Already dialing. And by the way, we're not leaving? This house? It's in my name. Remember? My grandmother's gift. That night changed everything. But not in the way Mike and Barbara planned. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and sleepless nights. My lawyer, Rachel, was a godsend, a tough woman who'd seen it all but still had fire in her eyes when I showed her our bank statements. They didn't think this through, she said, spreading documents across her desk. Joint accounts, your income records, the timing of the ticket purchase. This isn't just about the lottery win anymore. It's about financial misconduct. Meanwhile, Mike and Barbara were everywhere on local news and social media, flashing their new wealth. Mike bought a Ferrari, Barbara was showing off diamonds. They thought they'd already won. That's what made it so sweet when the court date finally arrived. I'll never forget walking into that courtroom. Emily squeezed my hand tight. I'd explained everything to her in a way an 8-year-old could understand. Mommy and Daddy need a judge to help them solve a problem, I'd said. She was stronger than any child should have to be. Mike swaggered in like he owned the place, his expensive lawyer at his side. Barbara sat in the front row, dripping in new jewelry, looking at me like I was something stuck to her shoe. But I held my head high. I had truth on my side, and bank statements to prove it. Your Honor, Mike's lawyer started, all smooth talk and fancy words. My client purchased this ticket with his own money. The fact that his wife— If I may, Rachel interrupted, pulling out documents. We have evidence showing the exact withdrawal from their joint account. Money that came directly from Mrs. Thompson's paychecks while Mr. Thompson was unemployed. The judge peered over his glasses at the statements. I watched Mike's smirk fade as page after page showed my deposits, his withdrawals, the timeline of everything. Then came the bombshell. Further, Rachel continued, Mr. Thompson made this purchase while being fully supported by my client's income, having contributed nothing to household expenses for months. The lottery ticket was purchased using marital assets, specifically Mrs. Thompson's earnings. Barbara tried to interrupt from her seat. This is ridiculous. My son is Wilson. The judge cut her off sharply. Another outburst, and you'll be removed from my courtroom. Hours passed. Each piece of evidence painted the full picture, not just of the lottery ticket, but of everything. My work records, Emily's medical bills that I'd paid alone, the emptied accounts. Finally, the judge cleared his throat. The room went silent. Based on the evidence presented, this court finds that the lottery winnings constitute marital property. Given Mr. Thompson's pattern of financial irresponsibility and Mrs. Thompson's consistent support of the household, I am awarding Mrs. Thompson 75% of the lottery proceeds. The courtroom erupted. Barbara screamed something about appeals. Mike's face turned purple, but all I could feel was relief, not for the money, but for the justice. Tina Vivi, Meyer Jovete. As we left the courthouse, Emily looked up at me. Does this mean we won, Mommy? I hugged her close. Yes, baby. But you know what? We won the moment we decided to stand up for ourselves. Little did I know, karma wasn't done with Mike and Barbara yet. The months after the court decision taught me a lot about people and money. While Mike and Barbara appealed the decision and lost, I met with a financial advisor named James, a calm, grandfatherly man who helped me make smart choices for Emily's future. First thing, he said during our meeting, let's set up a college fund for Emily. Then we'll look at safe investments, maybe a new house in a better school district. No flashy cars or diamonds for us, just security and stability. But across town, Mike and Barbara had different ideas. I heard about it all through mutual friends. Mike bought 3 sports cars in the first month. Barbara got a mansion with a pool she never used. They were living the rich life they thought they deserved. Every weekend was another party, another shopping spree, another chance to show off. Then came the whispers. Did you hear about Mike? My friend Lisa asked during coffee one morning. He's gotten into gambling, big time. Lost $500,000 in one weekend in Vegas. I just sipped my coffee. Our new house was modest but paid for. Emily was thriving in her new school. More stories followed. Barbara's credit cards were declined at expensive stores. Mike's Ferrari disappeared from his driveway. Their giant house sprouted for sale signs. Then one rainy Tuesday evening, there was a knock at my door. Mike stood there, looking nothing like the smirking man from the courtroom. His designer clothes were wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. Sarah, his voice cracked. I messed up. The money, it's mostly gone. Mom's selling her jewelry. I miss you and Emily. I've changed. Maybe we could... I held up my hand. Stop right there. You didn't miss us when you had millions. You didn't miss us when you tried to throw us out. You missed the stability, the peace. But that's not love, Mike. But Emily needs her father. He tried. Emily needs people who love her consistently, not just when things get tough. She's doing great, by the way. Thanks for asking the first time in months. Barbara showed up the next day, minus the designer handbag and flashy jewelry. Quinn, still not Sarah, you have to help him. He's my son. We can be a family again. I looked at her, remembering all those years of snide comments. The smirk when they tried to kick us out. Family? You called me a gold digger. Wanted to take my daughter away. Now you want a family? We made mistakes, she stammered. No, I said firmly. You showed us exactly who you are. The money didn't change you. It revealed you. After they left, Emily came downstairs. Was that Dad and Grandma? Yes, sweetie. Are they coming back? I hugged her tight. No, honey. But you know what? We're doing just fine without them. And we were. While Mike and Barbara's fortune disappeared in a flash of bad decisions and expensive tastes, we'd built something better. A life of security, love, and peace. Our house might not be a mansion, but it's filled with laughter. Emily's college fund grows every month, and my investments are steady. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's living well. You know what's funny? Sometimes when I shop at our local grocery store, I still see Barbara there. No more designer clothes, just regular outfits like everyone else. She pretends not to see me, but I catch her watching as Emily and I load our cart with ingredients for our weekly baking sessions. Last month, Emily came home excited about her science fair project. She won first place. As I helped her hang the blue ribbon in her room, I found an old photo tucked in her drawer. It was from before everything happened. Mike holding her on his shoulders at the park. She looked at me with those wise eyes that kids sometimes get. "Mom," she said, "I'm glad we're where we are now, even without Dad." That hit me hard. Not with sadness, but with pride. My little girl understood something that took me years to learn. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed leads you to what you actually deserve. I heard Mike had to move to a small apartment across town. His gambling debts caught up with him. The Ferrari? Long gone. Those fancy friends who came with his newfound wealth? Disappeared faster than his millions. Barbara had to sell her dream mansion. Turns out maintaining a pool is expensive when you're back to counting pennies. But us? We're thriving. I invested in a small rental property. Nothing fancy, just a steady income. Emily's college fund is growing nicely. We take modest vacations, making memories that don't need a luxury price tag. Last summer, we went camping by the lake. Emily said it was better than any resort because we could see the stars. The hospital promoted me to director of nursing last week. As I was clearing out my old locker, I found a crumpled lottery ticket from years ago. Had to laugh at the irony. You see, money doesn't just test people's character, it reveals it. Me. Yesterday, I received a letter from Mike's lawyer. He is trying one last time to appeal the court decision. But you know what? I'm not even angry anymore. That chapter of our lives is closed. Instead, I focused on helping Emily with her homework, planning our weekend movie night, and living our best life. We make pancakes every Sunday morning, volunteer at the local animal shelter, and have game nights where we laugh until our sides hurt. You might think this is a story about winning the lottery, but it's not. It's about winning at life, about choosing dignity over revenge, wisdom over waste, and love over greed. Sure, the money helped, I won't lie about that. But the real wealth? It's in the peace we found, the strength we built, and the life we created. Finding gold. Emily asked me recently if I ever regretted how things turned out. I looked around our cozy home, thought about our peaceful life, and smiled. "No, baby," I told her. "Sometimes losing what you thought was everything shows you what matters, and that's worth more than any lottery ticket could ever buy."